All right. Welcome to Ben Talks Talent. Today, we are going to have a conversation with an HR professional, and she is going to walk us through her perspective, share some of her thoughts about her career in HR, and her advice to candidates. LeTonya, if you could
Hi.
introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi. So, yes, my name is LaTonya, and I've been in HR now for over 20 years. I've been in a variety of organizations in different industries, mainly in the HR business partner space. So, that's
Awesome.
kind of high level.
Okay, great. So you've been in HR in the field for about 20 years. If you had to give advice to people who are pursuing a career in HR or they're very early on in their career in HR and they want to advance and they want to grow in that field, what advice would you give them?
I would say probably key is knowing the business,
Yeah,
intimately knowing the business, being able to talk the language of the business. That would be very key. I think some people, I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to get in HR because I like working with people." It
yeah,
is really a lot more than that. Of course, that's a huge part of it, but a part of it is being able to work with the business to be able to, identify their people opportunities and be able to come to the table with solutions. So you can't do that if you don't know the business. So I would say that would be
yeah.
the first thing.
Okay.
The second thing is one, being able to solve people problems,
Yeah,
right? It's not just about being a sounding board for somebody who is upset about their manager. It's about being able to partner with the business on everything from retention, maybe training and development. So being that people solver. And then thirdly, I would say that being able to work with people is very key, right?
yeah,
Being
sure.
approachable, being trustworthy, being dependable, being consistent. So of
Yeah.
course those things would also be very important.
Okay, good. That's good. I think that gives a good perspective. And I think when people think about, hey, I want to get in this career, it's really easy to just be like, oh, I like this, so I'm going to do that. But there's often, I think, a lot more to it.
Oh, it
Um,
is. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people's like, "Oh, you're in HR. I want to get in HR because I like working with people," and you have no idea how that grates my nerves
yeah,
because it is so much
yeah,
more than that. But and
totally.
so I would encourage people who are looking at a career in HR to do some research. Look at
Yeah,
some of the job descriptions to see what are companies looking for because it is more than just working with people, so to speak.
yeah, absolutely. Good. So let me ask you this: if you were hiring for your team, let's just say in a hypothetical situation, and you were looking for HR people, maybe early on in their career, what would you look for? Like, as a seasoned HR professional, if you were going to build a team, what are the like qualities, behaviors, experience, whatever matters to you? What are the things that would be high on your list of things you would try to identify in a candidate?
Well, I would say for an early career person, and I will say, I have my master's degree in HR,
Yeah,
but the learning really comes on the job.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
while it is beneficial to have a degree or an advanced degree, I would say that somebody who is able to learn the business, being able to work with ambiguity,
Yeah,
someone who is results focused and project oriented, and then someone who is able to build strong relationships and trust with our clients, so to speak.
okay. So, like in an interview setting, a person who can have examples of those ready to go and they can share maybe the different times they've done that, that would impress you. Like,
Yes.
okay, okay. Yeah, so my YouTube channel is all about interviewing. It's all about, then advancing your career. So I always think of that through the lens of how do you demonstrate those things, in that interview setting, right? You've got a few minutes to impress someone. You've got a few minutes to demonstrate, hey, here's what I've done. Here's how I can add value to your organization. So those are the stories you'd be looking for someone to share.
Oh, absolutely. You brought up one thing that I'm assuming you've talked about this in your podcast is that I am very big on behavioral based interviewing.
Yeah,
So when I do interview people, I do like for people to provide examples of how they
yeah,
have done or handled situations in the past.
yeah,
And even if you haven't been in an HR role, if you, let's say, for example, you've been in customer service on the phone,
hmm,
tell me about a time that you had to deal with a very difficult and irate customer. Walk
yeah,
me through how you handled that. So, as long as you're able to demonstrate those types of things in your past roles, whatever they are. I don't care if it's volunteerism, being on a board, part of the church or whatever. As
Yeah.
long as you're able to demonstrate those kinds of things, then those are things I'm looking for in a particular interview.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've done a lot of videos on behavioral interviewing, and the second you
Okay.
said, "Tell me about a time when," immediately in my head you know, I hear STAR, I hear situation, task, action, response, and then an L in the end,
Absolutely.
lesson. If you learn something
Yes.
that's applicable to future situations. Okay, cool. If you had like, I think this one makes sense because you're in Florida, you're close to the wizarding world of Harry Potter. If you had a magic wand and you could fix something that's broken in hiring, either for your organization or in general, what are the things you would like want to go, this would be fixed?
Hmm.
Just high level, I look at the broken parts of hiring sometimes and I go, oh, if we could just do this.
Yeah. I think sometimes, one, I think the rate or the speed of the hire, because sometimes,
Yeah,
especially in a large organization, there's a lot of bureaucracy,
yeah,
approvals that are needed, that kind of thing. So sometimes, it can be a long process, and I know sometimes candidates get frustrated about that. But I think for me, just kind of looking a little bit differently as an HR business partner, supporting my clients, a lot of them tend to go on their gut feeling,
yeah,
right? They tend to go
sure.
on their gut feeling versus asking very targeted questions around, tell me about a time. And unfortunately, there have been times that I've seen things that have been missed where maybe we
Yeah,
didn't get the perfect hire.
yeah,
So I would say that, I think people need to take the interviewing process very seriously,
yeah.
study, because I think more than often people kind of tend to lean more on their gut feeling than they would really factual based information.
Yeah, which opens the door up to biases and all sorts of things. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's good. I think speed is one of those things that I think so many companies could improve on that. It's one of the it's an easy thing. It's a low hanging fruit. It's like whenever I
Yes,
think of like what are the easy things to fix in hiring, it's like we'll try to move faster, and then also sell the candidates. Like tell them why they should work for your organization as well, because it's a two-way street.
exactly. And I know, like, in some organizations, we forget that we also need to sell ourselves.
Yeah,
And when you leave candidates, lingering out there, when you require them to interview with 10 and 15 and 20 people,
yeah.
that's a turnoff to candidates. So I think that also needs to be kept in mind as we're really out there, really looking for the best talent.
Right. The best talent is not always available for long. And when someone does that first interview, even if they were a passive candidate, they weren't looking for a job, that opens a door in them. And now they start looking, at several opportunities. So
Yes.
speed is really important. Um, if you were to give one piece of advice to candidates on what would make them a better candidate or just your perspective, what is the single best piece of advice you could give to a candidate in an interview process?
I will go back to how you answer the question. So sometimes you can have not so great interviewers.
Yeah,
So sometimes you have to answer the questions in a way that's going to best demonstrate your skills, particularly if they aren't HR related, so to speak, right?
yeah,
So, for example, like, oh, well, Tanya, do you like to work with people? I do like to work with people. Let me give you some examples of situations where I've had to deal with difficult people or whatever the case may
yeah,
be, right? So, being able to do that. I think another thing is study the job description because that is your map for the
yeah,
things you need to be able to speak to and try to find out. And sometimes I'll ask this when I'm interviewing with people, well, what can you give me an idea of your ideal candidate?
yeah.
And that way, as I'm answering my questions, I can kind of speak to those specific things.
Yeah. I love those answers. And I think your first one highlights a really important point because I make a lot of videos on how to answer an individual interview question. And there's some where it's like, you might not get it wrong, but you also might not be maximizing the opportunity. So if you say
Exactly.
like, do you like working with people? And you go, yes, I do. I love working with people. Like that isn't getting the answer wrong per se, but you are certainly not maximizing the opportunity to demonstrate times that you've done that and why you'd be able to do it for their organization. So I think
But
that's great.
imagine you ask that question. Am I going to say, no, I don't like working with people? I mean, you
Right,
know what I'm saying?
right. You shouldn't. That would be a real quick way to like exit the
Exactly.
interview process. Um, Good. Let's see here. I've got a few more. Um, when you have hired in the past, or you've been involved, or you've helped your business partners and you've advised them to hire, what do you think has been the things that have made you or your team successful?
Mhm. So I can speak to this rather recently. I did hire a person for my team last year,
Yeah,
and I'm very pleased with the hire. I think it was
good.
in fact, I've gotten feedback from other people. It's a very good hire. So I'm, pat myself on
Right?
the back. Um, Again, it's just really asking very good questions and probing where you need to on their background and their experience on certain things. And even if a person doesn't have specifically related experience,
Yeah,
if you're able to kind of, ascertain or deduce, okay, well, they did this, so they could probably do very well in this situation. So I think that, again, I can't go back to emphasizing the interview process enough, is being
yeah,
able to have those targeted questions that's going to hit on the main things you're looking for in a candidate, probing enough so that you can have a high level of confidence with that hire.
yeah. Awesome. Um, Good. I like this one because this one's an interesting question, and it's not so much like in the day to day, but it's just kind of about you. So when you started,
Oh,
your career, when you started college, when you started to dream of like what you wanted to do, was this what you imagined, or was it something else? And if something else, what was it?
this was not it, Ben.
Okay, okay,
So, and I do have an interesting background. So, when I was in college, I actually wanted to be in radio. I wanted to
okay,
be a, yeah, I wanted to be a radio personality.
yeah,
And so my school didn't have they didn't have a communications major. So I majored in English. I got my minor in communications, and I actually
okay.
went to broadcasting school after that for a short
Oh, no
period of
kidding.
time.
Okay,
The radio thing didn't work out, and because I needed to work, I ended up applying to be a substitute teacher in the Charlotte
okay,
Mecklenburg school system.
okay,
From there, I was recruited to work as a secretary in their human resource department.
okay,
I did that for a short period of time, and then they offered me a position on their teacher certification program. I did that for 2 years. And because of my relationships and my reputation that I had as a substitute secretary,
yeah,
they offered me a position as their orientation coordinator. So all I did was new hire orientation. At the time, Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools was the largest employer in Charlotte. I would have over 100 people in the orientation session.
oh, wow,
We would bring on board about 1,000 every summer. So I spent
yeah,
my entire time doing the orientation. You have to do fingerprinting, background checks, and all of that. So really just to challenge myself, I made it very creative. I, made games and stuff.
yeah,
And I really think that's what honed my presentation skills, just doing that over and over. And so after that, in fact, my boss, Dr. Ricardo Sockwell, he kept impressing me of the need to go back to school. So I ended up going back to
yeah,
school to get my master's degree in HR. And it kind of went from there. And I was just been fortunate to land in some very good companies, have had some outstanding mentors and sponsors.
yeah.
And that's kind of what has gotten me to today.
Awesome. I've only got two more questions. One HR related and one just you related. Which one do you want to do first? You related or HR?
We can do HR and we get to
Okay.
it.
What is your favorite thing about working in HR?
What is my favorite thing? I do like working on projects.
Okay.
And yeah, I do like working on projects and bringing a team together and putting it together and seeing it to fruition. Um, I actually took on a new role last year
Okay.
in labor relations, and it has been absolutely exciting to me because
Yeah.
I haven't done labor relations in over 20 years.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing a resurgence of whatever, and just kind of getting back in that, because I'm able to learn. There's some things I want to learn around the law, the do's and don'ts, the NLRB, negotiations, and all of that. So I will say that that has been extremely. I really feel like it's given me a different breath, or
Yeah.
renewed breath, because I've been doing HRBP work for so long. And
Yeah.
even though I'm still very much doing HR work, it's a different slant. And that is very much energizing me and exciting me right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. I personally love learning. And I think if you want to be energized in your career, learn something new related to it. Like learn a new
Yes.
facet of it, learn something adjacent to it, learn a new skill that can make you more competent
Yes.
around it. And for me, that'll drive passion. And speaking of passion, last question, um, non-career related, what are you passionate about? This is just kind of like the you moment.
I am passionate about my family. I'm passionate
Yeah.
about my friends.
Yeah.
I love health and fitness,
Nice.
and I love music.
Yeah.
You guys can have Netflix all day, but don't take away my Spotify.
Okay. Yeah.
And I like to travel. So I think that
Awesome.
about sums it up.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Thank you for your insight. We appreciate it. Thanks, LeTonya.
All right. Thank you, Ben.